Okay. Okay. So the Lakota saw the Buddha as being divine. And when you think about it, this goes back into that dualistic thing that we talked about in class, that so many religions have this motif where they start off as something where it's your responsibility to achieve salvation, whatever form that looks like, but that over time the founder seems much further away. And when you think about these early Buddhists, they haven't even been showing pictures or anything of the Buddha. So you can imagine on some level that by positing the Buddha as being divine and only looking like human beings allows you a couple of things. It allows you to glorify the founder of your tradition, and it also allows you kind of unlimited access. Divine figures, the idea is that they're out there, they're attainable, they're approachable. You can get at them. And so I always think that this move in Buddhism, as the Buddha starts to take on this divine persona, is about having the Buddha be accessible. Okay? But these early Buddhists also didn't want to have their understanding that all is one, or non-duality, they didn't want that disturbed. So that's where the Trikaya theory I was talking about comes back to. The idea that yes, you've got a Buddha, but he's really only a magical creation, that Nirmanakaya, that is actually just one of communicated or formed enlightened energy, which is the Sambhogakaya, which further comes out of all enlightened energy, all dynamic energy, which is the Dharmakaya, or that big body that the Buddha comes out of. I've got a really good discussion question that I'm going to ask you guys too. All right, so looking at a couple other things. A couple of big schools of thought come out of this tradition. The Madhyamaka school, with their spokesperson Nagarjuna. All right, these guys were trying to figure out what really exists. Why do we see the world the way we see it, right? And then this goes back to that concept of interdependent origination. Now, do you remember when during the residency, I wrote on the board this long list of stuff, and the idea was, started with karmic constituents, consciousness, individuality, the six senses, contact, feeling, desire, clinging, becoming, birth, old age, rebirth. Okay, so you have this cycle, right? And the Madhyamakas looked at that, and do you remember that the early Theravadin, the Theravadins actually came up with this idea that that's why we see reality the way we do, because we're ignorant, and that's how this whole process starts out. We're ignorant. Okay, and in that search, these early Buddhists were also trying to figure out what is there, what is reality made out of? And they said it was made out of these dharmas with a little d, dharmas, and they had their own svabhava, or existence. Okay, one of the big things that the Madhyamakas did was they turned around and they said, hey, listen, if you're going to have, and it's actually on turn to page 89 in Skeleton, and you can go back and read this discussion. But if you make it so one flows into the next, consciousness flows into individuality, which focuses into the six senses, which leads to contact, which leads to feeling, which leads to desire, you wouldn't be able to morph one feeling into another if they had this svabhava. So you've got a critique, basically. Nagarjuna, here's a quote by Nagarjuna: because things are empty of any inherent, separate, unchangeable, permanent, existential self-existence, it is possible for relativity, for interdependence to occur. It is possible for things to interact. Okay? Now, some of the other schools looked at this and thought that the Madhyamakas were very nihilistic. But Nagarjuna said, no, I'm not nihilistic. I'm drawing a middle way between nihilism and eternalism. Nothingness or everythingness. Okay? Now the Yogacharans, and look particularly, there's something cool you can read on 117 of Skeleton, that I'm trying to remember what I told you here. 117 there's just a nice quote here about Nagarjuna and how Nagarjuna, how he was seen by especially the Vasubandhu and the Yogacharans. And they still saw these guys as being too nihilistic, right? To say that there's no Svabhava, I don't know, I don't think we really buy it. And these guys, the Yogacharans, were very much into the idea that the totality of our experience is dependent on one's mind. Okay? So they said that when you're seeing things the way they really should be, there's a distinction between subject, there's no distinction between subject and object. Okay? However, when you have the absence of duality, then you will be seeing things the way they really are. And so if you have a clear mind, or a bodhisattva mind, or a bodhicitta, which is the arising of the enlightened mind, then your experience will be dependent on that enlightened lens, being able to see things in a completely non-dualistic way. Okay? So that's what those guys talked about, and I think I'm drawing to the conclusion of what I wanted to talk to y'all about today. So I'll send you the questions, and we're done.